Roxanne Qualls is a current city council member since 2007. She was also a city council member 1991 to 1993, and then Cincinnati mayor from 1993 to 1999. She is a former visiting professor at Northern Kentucky University. She holds a master's in public administration from Harvard University. She is endorsed by the Democratic Party and Charter Committee and lives in downtown Cincinnati. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for hosting this. I want to thank the Greenwich Tavern as well as the League of Women Voters. My name is Roxanne Qualls, and I made the decision 2 years ago to re-enter public service because I love the city of Cincinnati, just as I'm sure all of you do. And I believe that the unique skills I bring as a result of being a community organizer prior to ever being elected to office, a 3-term mayor, and a teacher and student of public policy helps me to understand what we need to do to improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods, to develop a local economy that is globally competitive, and also to help wisely manage what is becoming clearly more limited resources for the city of Cincinnati. In respect, however, specifically to the question of neighborhood revitalization and neighborhood development, since I have served on council over the last 2 years, I have proposed and pursued policies around a Great Neighborhoods Initiative, which includes working with communities to develop an innovative, community-driven alternative to conventional zoning called form-based codes. These stimulate neighborhood development and investment by creating mixed-use, walkable neighborhoods that also include great public spaces. In essence, what they do is they build upon the competitive advantage of Cincinnati's neighborhoods. In addition, have worked to develop new street policies that preserve neighborhood character by designing streets for people and places instead of cars, the consequence of which is to enhance property values, create better social spaces, facilitate walking, bicycling, and transit. The city is now in the process of developing what is known as a complete streets policy. Have also worked with many urban redevelopment corporations and community development corporations in the city of Cincinnati, not just around form-based codes and complete streets, but around initiatives that they would like to undertake, such as College Hill, in the area of urban land banking, so that they can begin to control the future of their business districts. Have also worked very heavily in the area of transportation. In fact, I chair the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee, which is looking at how do we use the coming investment in I-75 and the Brent Spence Bridge to correct the problems that were created in the past for many of the neighborhoods in the Mill Creek Corridor. And in fact, in November, we will begin doing an intensive focus area study in 5 neighborhoods for the purpose of actually helping them to utilize what will be a massive investment in their neighborhoods and to make sure that they actually benefit from the reconstruction of I-75. And finally, well, I'm glad you like that, thank you. And finally, in the area of crime, have recognizing that if people don't feel safe, then no amount of investment is going to actually bring a neighborhood back. You have to have investment and a sense of safety. And so I've worked and have supported Mr. Thomas's efforts around SERVE, as well as have supported the establishment of neighborhood prosecutors to prosecute quality of life crimes in the neighborhood. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for organizing this opportunity this evening.
Ms. Qualls, to reduce the upcoming budget deficits, what specific areas would you cut and why?
Well, there are a couple of things we need to progress through. Number one, with this coming budget and the projected deficit of $51 million, there is going to be hurt all around. So people need to understand that. But first, all the fluff goes. So all those take-home cars you heard about, gone. Secondly, we'll be talking coordination and integration of departments that have duplicative services, and so looking at IT, human resources, finances. And we are looking to the city manager. He's been directed to really examine that and come back to us in this budget with consolidations. 3, looking at, and this is not so much going to be paying off in this coming year, but looking at shared services, consolidated services through the GSEP project with the county. And then finally, what we're looking at, for example, in areas like recreation, and recreation has been working on this for a while, how do we actually reduce services based upon usage as opposed to closing certain centers, but just reduce usage. And then finally, we're going to look at potentially, we have given each department a number that they have to meet, and we are waiting to hear back from those departments how they intend to meet them. But we must balance our budget.
And Ms. Qualls, the first question I'd like to ask, the League has been looking this year at studying some of the issues around homelessness. This summer, we actually did a tour of many of the homeless shelters in the Cincinnati area. There is a concern that while the city is developing plans to address the problems of the long-term chronically homeless, the current financial crisis and high unemployment is flooding the shelters with new homeless. My understanding is that all the family shelters are at capacity and are turning away as many families as they are serving, and that this winter the drop-in center will no longer be able to meet the increased need of shelter over the cold months. How can the city help meet this increased need for shelter as part of a basic service for its residents?
Well, a couple of things. We are seeing, as a result of the economy, a tremendous increase in the needs of people in general who are marginal in our communities, but particularly with folks on the streets and homeless families. One thing which you did mention or made reference to is the Homeless to Homes initiative, which is really looking at how do we, for the first time, develop a program that addresses the needs of single homeless men and women, from emergency shelter to transitional housing to permanent supportive housing. And my anticipation is that that will actually produce some very significant results as we, private sector and public sector, move to implement it. Secondly, though, in the area of the increasing demand for homeless housing that we have in the city, one of the things which the city has done is it has taken over the Mount Airy shelter that was going to be closed by Hamilton County Jobs and Family Services, so that just keeps 67 beds open, but that's clearly not enough. We also know that we are seeing some federal dollars come in that are helping with provision of some shelter services, but that's all not enough. And so what we're going to have to do is look at our limited federal dollars and see if we're going to end up having to reallocate them to support more housing development for shelter and housing for homeless families.
Ms. Qualls, you've been around City Hall off and on forever, it seems like.
Well, it's all relative.
You're young,
Based on your experience, what do you think is the single biggest impediment to attracting new business and jobs to Cincinnati's neighborhood, and what do you think should be done to address it?
The single biggest impediment to attracting? Well, actually, I think that there's two levels you can address it. One is overall in terms of the region. The single biggest impediment overall is that this is one of the most sprawling regions in the country, and we have a consistent pattern of investing in infrastructure, which takes housing and jobs further and further out of the city. Okay, so that's just a policy that needs to change. On a more practical level, we need to actually have an integrated public transportation system that takes advantage of the density and the walkability of our existing neighborhoods and really what's actually their competitive advantage, invest in it, and make these our neighborhoods the places that people actually want to live in. And many people spend a lot of money for very fake imitations in the suburbs.
Okay, my first question for you is a lot of the city revenue goes into Paul Brown Stadium. If elected, what would you do to create resolution methods to work with Hamilton County commissioners to get that money back into the city's neighborhoods so that the taxpayers won't have to pay as much as they are?
Well, a couple things. Actually, none of the city revenues go into Paul Brown Stadium. Mm-hmm. That is the county in terms of sales tax support. Okay. In fact, I was mayor when we actually negotiated the deal with the county that they assumed responsibility for the stadiums and for the construction, and also was mayor when we offered to take over the construction because we knew we could manage it better than the county, and they refused to allow us to do that and had the cost overruns. And I was also mayor when we offered to help negotiate those contracts, which everybody criticized because we had long-time experience negotiating with large companies, and the county refused, and they got the contracts, which we see. So the bottom line is that the city actually doesn't bear responsibility for what we're seeing. It's a county problem. However, we're all suffering as a result of that. And what we see in the county is a worse financial crisis on some levels than what we are experiencing in the city.
You each will have 1 minute for a wrap-up statement.
Well, thank you very much. I do want to say something that's just general. Number one, more police officers does not necessarily make a city more safe. And that safety is actually not about numbers, it's about smarter policing. And Mr. Thomas's SERVE initiative is an example of using data, technology, and analysis in cooperation with the University of Cincinnati to actually be able to deploy resources well. New York City, if you actually look at the numbers, Giuliani's increase in his police force were the result of his forcing the Transit Authority police to merge with the city police. And so while there might have been some slight real increases, the massive increase was actually the result of a merger. And he brought in William Bratton, the pioneer, and actually the use of data and analysis and real-time policing that made the difference in New York City. So there. But this is an opportunity for the city of Cincinnati. We are seeing residents move in. We are seeing businesses come back. We need strong neighborhoods that focus on their strengths through form-based codes, complete streets, as well as other tools that include SERVE and the building of a public transportation system. Thank you very much.